Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast. Robbie here, along with,
With Ruth as well.
again, as part of this series about the different parts of the coaching business flywheel, which in other ways we could think of as just the really fundamental foundations of a coaching business. Um, so if you're interested, check back a couple of episodes for uh, the first episode in this series about the coaching business flywheel. We did a dive into that model. You can also read more if you get on the Coach's Journey website, or if you download from there the free ebook, An Introduction to the Coaching Business Flywheel. The idea is it's the set of things that create a virtuous cycle so that if you do enough of them, you almost can't help but, crucial flywheel language, almost can't help but have a sustainable coaching business. And if you don't do any of them, you actually can't have a sustainable coaching business. And so this is important because it lets us choose how we put energy into business development. Like that's one of the crucial things, like decision making. It's like, okay, well, if I don't have a sustainable coaching business now, this model, now all models are, as George Box, the statistician, if I can speak, said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So this is a model, but it's a really useful one, at least to me, for thinking about my business. It's like, okay, if I don't have as many clients as I want right now, where in this flywheel is that? What is causing that in the flywheel? Where is it breaking down? But also, if I'm going to put energy into my business growing, and the great thing about a flywheel is it stores up energy for the future. So if I'm going to put energy into this, like where's the best place for me to put energy? Uh, so that my business continues to grow. Now, we're going to start the kind of going through, we're going to do an episode where we go through each of the 5 things on the flywheel. So if you want to look at the flywheel, you can go to thecoachesjourney.com, like I said, but we're going to start with connecting with people, right? That's the top of the flywheel. Now, it is worth saying, I said this in the last time we were speaking, Ruth, for the show, it is worth saying that it's not necessarily the place that I advise new coaches to start putting energy into their business. And that's because people always come to coaching with a network. They actually know a load of people. So often the first best step to drive energy into your coaching business when you're starting out is to offer people opportunities to experience you more. And we'll get into that the next time we're speaking for this little mini series. But if people want to get into that now, you can read more about why I think that in that ebook that I mentioned. You can get some help with that in the Coaching Business Flywheel Booster Pack, which is like a set of template emails that I send to clients and use in my business that you can buy. So I wanted to kind of say all that at the top, just because if you want to create clients now as fast as possible, go to offering opportunities to people experience you more. If that episode's already out, listen to that one. If it's not, hit the Coaching Business Flywheel ebook and that kind of thing, or get in touch. But in a way, the most fundamental part of a coaching business, the bit that I think is least deniable about the flywheel, is that if you never connect with any people meaningfully, you can't have a coaching business. And if you
Okay.
connect with enough people meaningfully, you almost can't help but have a coaching business, even if you think very little about, if we make this a real numbers game, if you think very little about everything else, if you were to purely focus on connecting meaningfully with as many people as possible, as long, give or take a couple of conditions, like at some point you tell people somehow that you're a coach and that you work with people, it would be real. In the end, I think you would just have clients. Now, there's lots of things we can do, and we'll get into that in the rest of this mini series to kind of speed the flywheel along. But that's the crucial headline. And just to say a few things, if people are wondering what we're
Can I
like,
just butt in?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, please interrupt. That's your job.
So, what is the difference between connecting with people and inviting people to experience you?
Okay, yeah, yeah, really good. So let's make it really clear. What is connecting with people? What does it mean in this case? Right? It's not networking. So it's okay, everybody. You don't hate this, right? This thing that we're talking about. This is making meaningful connection with somebody. People love this, right? Just finding somebody and creating a meaningful connection with them, right? In a way, you're right to ask this question because it is in a way, usually when you're doing this, you are already giving people some experience of you as you do this. That's probably why that thing that I just said is true, that the connecting piece, if you do it enough, you almost can't help but it's like self-contained foundational piece, because as you connect with somebody meaningful, you are giving them an experience of you. So on some level, you will be, you will be kind of planting the seed for, I want to spend more time with this person. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
But it's
So
not
give
that
us some
yeah,
examples.
exactly.
So
It's not networking. It's just creating meaningful connection with people. A couple of other kind of foundational things to say. We're only connecting here. So in this phase, if we want to think about doing it really well, we're just thinking, how do I meaningfully connect with more people or create more meaningful connection with people that I know? Um,
and what are your kind of examples of that?
yeah, okay. So there's lots of ways it can happen. There's lots of ways to think about it. Like it was really powerful for me to track it. So I think I learned a lot about offering people. So in my story, the kind of two crucial coaches in my business development were Joel Monk and then Rich Litvin. And with Joel, he invited me into some practices inspired by Litvin. The practices around offering people opportunities to experience me more and around money. But it was when I was in the Prosperous Coach salon with Rich that we tracked, amongst other things, every week we would submit a weekly report where we tracked the number of people we had connected with that week. So this is great because it makes it into a game. And at that point, you start to become really aware. What are the connections that you make? So for example, this could be meeting someone at an event, right? Like I meet someone at an event. I go out to, it could be a pure, like kind of classic networking. I go out to an event with the purpose of meeting new people and I meet them and I connect with them. And what's good about tracking, and the reason I mentioned that up front is that tracking really helped me make up my own rules for what counts. If I want connecting with people to count towards my tracking for building my coaching business with Rich, what makes it like a really useful connection? Because, for example, adding someone who's never met me on Facebook, you could call that connecting with somebody, but it wouldn't actually help your flywheel move because they'll probably just think, who is this person who has added me? I don't know. And there's no chance that they are curious from that. Almost no chance. They'll be a little bit like curious if I don't know if they're anything like me when someone I don't know adds me on LinkedIn or Facebook or something. I'm a little curious is this someone I've forgotten? Or if it's a woman, is this someone who's got married and changed their name and that's why I don't recognize who it is? But I'm not there going like, oh, who is this person? What do they do? What are they about? Um, Whereas if I meet someone at an event, we have a great conversation, then that's connecting with somebody. I think it counts as connecting with somebody if so what I do to so when I was tracking that with Rich, I started a practice, if somebody adds me on LinkedIn, that doesn't really count because I don't know this person. They're not really going to reach out to me for coaching because we've just connected on LinkedIn. But how can I make them someone who might later reach out to me for coaching? Well, I can exchange messages with them on LinkedIn, try at least to engage them until we have found some meaningful connection through those messages. So that would be another example. We talked a bit in the last time we spoke about once you have a body of work, sometimes this happens without you knowing it, right? Someone gets referred to you and they read your website and then they're connected to you. But for the purposes of, and it can happen without you knowing, but for the purposes of how do we put energy into our flywheel, that's a much, what would we say, like longer road to connecting with somebody than like actually connecting with people.
Mm.
So does that give some answer? I can do another round of that though if you want to double click it again.
Yeah, I think like connecting with people. So obviously out in the world, physically meeting people. Um, and then you've got like virtual connections, LinkedIn, striking up conversations, whatever. Is there anything else?
I don't think so. I can kind of think about it systematically. Like, I guess the third one is so there would be kind of two. It depends how you make the distinction, but there would be like two types of direct me actually engaging with you live, right, or almost live. There would be kind of sending emails or LinkedIn messages or tweets or Instagram posts to each other, and there would be some version of that where we're actually speaking, like on the phone, on Zoom, or in person. So maybe that's three, right there. And then there would be the connections that happen when we're not actually live interacting with people. And that could be like, okay, if you have Ruth, if you've got like podcast content out there, you got blog post content out there could be people reading that right now. And like that's really hard to track and not
Mm.
that useful for thinking about putting your energy into the coaching business flywheel, but it is a part of this. So it's like, how does that someone move from, I guess this is the definition. You're connecting with someone, you are moving them from they don't know who you are
Or what you
or
do,
what you do to someone who does know
who
something about
you
who you
are and
are
what you
and
do.
what you do.
Yeah,
Um,
that's better. That's clearer, I think.
yeah, and I mean it's interesting because I remember one of the things I loved that Rich planted in my mind was you should also count connecting people to each other. Right. And
Mm.
this is a really good one because it is like it does all the jobs, right? It brings people into your mind. It also like shows generosity and service. People are usually super like if you're making a really good connection, people are usually really glad to have it, especially if it's heartfelt. Like sometimes I do it these days because I've got a bit more woo. I'm just like, I just really thought, did it with my friend Allegra, my friend Nicole the other day. I was just like, I was talking to Allegra. I just thought you two should really meet. And because they both know me enough now, they kind of listen to that and they're like, "Oh, sounds fun. Let's do it." And they had a great call. Like, and that does the job, right? Because it gets you into it gets me into their minds. I do it from service, right? I don't do it because I do it like it's held both things. We might want to talk about this in this conversation because we didn't talk about last time. It holds both the kind of the goal in mind. So I sometimes have this distinction goal work versus soul work. So I do know these days because I've practiced it so much that if I make enough connections, it'll be good for my coaching business. So I know that, but I hold it in the back of my mind and I think, from my soul, what would be a really lovely connection to make? Well, Nicole and Allegra would be a great connection. I'd love it if they knew each other. In fact, I'd love it if I could hang out with the two of them together. So they would probably love to hang out with each other. So let's just make that connection because it's a good thing to do. So we can hold that. Reconnecting with people should also be counted here. So like when I was tracking, right? The good thing about tracking something, especially if you're in a group with other people who are also tracking it, it's a little intense, but it's good. The good thing about it is you're looking for what are all the opportunities that can drive this number up. And one of the ones I got into a really good tracking got me into the mind of, okay, if I have an intuition to reconnect with somebody, if I have a thought of like, oh, this person would love this blog, or I just found myself thinking about this woman 6 times today, like reach out to them. And it's amazing how often somebody will say, do you know, I was just
Yeah.
thinking about you. Or you'll send them an article and be like, it's like you read my mind. I was just wondering about, or I just discovered this woman who wrote this article,
Mm.
So you get into that practice of reconnecting as well, of just being in contact with people, not to talk about your coaching business,
Yeah, just to
but
connect.
because it's a good thing that, like, basically, yeah, one of the other hosts of the show, Alex Witten, he has this beautiful thing he talks about sometimes, like authenticity and connection, being like the two crucial parts of what he wants to help his clients create. And most people are starved of genuine connection. Like we're flooded with connection and starved of genuine connection. So most
Mm.
people are like, mostly it's not invading someone's inbox if you're sending a really nice thing.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you just said invading someone's inbox, because what I'd just written down was about the stories we can tell ourselves, especially with reconnecting.
Yeah.
I've noticed, like with my clients that are coaches, oh, yeah, but it's just weird if I just send them a message out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, the crucial thing there is it weird?
Yeah, it's
Because if it's
not.
weird, it's weird. No, no, no. Sometimes it
Yeah,
is. If someone emails you and says, let's do it. Like someone emailed me and said, so I've just started a coaching business. I'm looking for some clients. Be great to catch up with you. Actually, if they
that's
emailed
weird.
me and said that, that would be
Yeah.
cool. I'd be like, well, great. I'm glad you're doing coaching. Listen to my podcast. But if I was just if it was my wife, she'd probably be a bit weirded out by it. Like, but it's only weird if it's weird. Like, actually, now I've said that out loud, I don't think that's a very good one because I can hear that sounds really reasonable to me. To the right person, to reach out to someone you know and trust and say, look, I'm just starting a coaching business. I need some help. I got some advice from a coach to strengthen my network because that's one of the things that I wish I'd been doing for the last 10 years. I thought of who I'd love to strengthen my network with. I thought of you. Would you be up for a coffee where I could just tell you a bit about what I'm doing? Like, actually, if someone takes offense to that, they're probably not somebody you want in your network
Yeah.
because you can be. But so one of the things we often do, you'll have seen this a bunch of times in the coaches journey community. One of my favorite moves that I find myself doing as a coach is somebody says, "How do I do this?" And I just play back to them exactly what they've just told me about why they want to connect with people. Just like almost always word for word with like 10% detachment, which I can have that they can't have, and 10% experience of doing that with lots of people. And then you almost always end up with this really beautiful, authentic way to reach out and connect with somebody that will touch the hearts of most of the people who read it because it's true. And so, mostly, like you
Also,
said, the
like a
stories we
step,
tell ourselves, right?
yeah, a step earlier, isn't it? Like we're talking about connecting. That doesn't necessarily mean I've started a coaching business. Can you help? It means,
Only connect with people. Find any way to just be in meaningful connection with somebody. Mostly, you want more of that in your life, whoever you are, listening. I certainly do, right? It's like every time I have a meaningful conversation with somebody, my life is a bit better, you know? So it's like that's all we're doing at this stage. Now, at some point in that, if we want this to be an effective part of the flywheel, at some point in that, like we said, they have to, like, you want it to be possible to know what you do. So, for example, when that was my rule for if I went to a networking event, my rule was like I find networking events hard. Like it's the introvert part of me. Um, Sometimes I've got the energy for it, sometimes I haven't. When I was really focused on building my business in the early days, if I went to an event, my rule was once I've made one connection that I could count towards the kind of thing we're talking about, I could go home if I'm tired, right? If I don't have that rule, then I'll just not go.
mm,
But if I, or I'll just stand at the back quietly enjoying my own company, which I actually love. But I'm there partly for business, especially if I've charged it to my business to go there, in some way, I have to do the business. Now, sometimes that would mean I connected with one person, and sometimes that would mean I stayed because I had a great time, loved the conversation, and got a load of energy from it, and would connect to 10 people. But the rule was, um, is there like have we had some kind of meaningful connection, and would it be possible if that person wanted to reach out to me about coaching or connect someone else to me about coaching? So in the old days, it would be, have they got a business card? Do they know my surname? Have we added each other on? Can we add each other on LinkedIn now after the conversation? And I would often like take responsibility for that. I got over my embarrassment about like LinkedIn feeling like adding someone on LinkedIn feeling like asking someone out, i.e. that I'm gonna be rejected. All my teen angst coming back up. In the end, I just practiced my way through that. It's like, no, if I want to count this person as someone I've connected with this week, I have to add them on LinkedIn. And so then it would be a little detective work, and it was a little stalkery to try and work out, find someone's surname. Like, okay, I know she was called Alice, and I know she worked for Diffid. So if I just search LinkedIn for Alice Diffid, what do I get? Or that would probably not work. But sometimes it would be like, okay, I know she worked for this charity, or I know he was a lawyer at Linklaters, and he had a more unusual name like Alid, and suddenly I can find Alid at Linklaters, and it's a
mm.
different thing. So
So
I would
there's
often,
something about
yeah.
tenacity there, isn't there?
For me,
And
yeah, for me, it comes from the gamification of it. So if I want to win at this game of connecting with people, get
mm,
more numbers on it. But this won't be for everybody. Like that was the thing that made me like, okay, how do I make it count towards that game? And again, we've talked about games before. I've talked about it elsewhere, but the games are fun because if you get the rules right and you take them seriously, but not too seriously. We'll probably talk a bit more about this when we talk about next time in this little series, and also when we're on the kind of tell people how you work piece. We'll probably talk about games in those ones because I played games in those that really helped. But the gamification made me a bit tenacious, and then practicing made me a bit tenacious.
so you were tracking when you were working with Rich.
Yeah.
What, like, how did you track? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it on your phone?
Yeah, I had a spreadsheet, and I did the weekly. So I had the weekly report, which I would send to Rich, and then I had a spreadsheet so that when I got to the weekly report, I knew what to put in it, right? And you can still find these bits on the spreadsheet. And then what I found is, so I didn't know, it's actually a bit longer for various reasons because of Christmas and things. It was 7 or 8 months of that tracking, right?
Okay.
So 7 or 8 months of tracking this thing really internalizes a lot of it. So that now I don't track it except if I am like I maybe should now. My business is slowing down at the moment. It's been slow. It's been like I don't know, slowest 6 months probably. Maybe
Okay.
since I started my coaching business. Like I probably
Wow.
should be thinking about it more now. It certainly felt a tough time. Um, but like mostly it's internalized so that I'm constantly like just attuned now after practicing for 7 or 8 months to, oh, there's a person I should connect with.
And how many people did you connect with in that time?
Oh, good question. No idea. I think I saved those weekly reports, and I think I regretted not
Ballpark.
saving them. I mean, hundreds,
Hundreds.
hundreds for
Amazing.
sure. Like, yeah, I mean, because once you get attuned to it, you start making, and this is why it's good to track, right? Once you get into it, you start making everything count. So it's like, okay, if I'm at my friend's birthday party, what do I have to do here to not be weird? I don't want to be that guy, right? But also, what do I need to do in order to get, I need to get some connections from this because that's part of the game.
So, and I think you might have mentioned this, but where do we talk about how we talk about ourselves as coaches?
Yeah.
Are we talking
Yeah.
about that here?
Yeah. Why not? It's a good time. Yeah. Um, so yeah, because we're talking about Lipton so much, but I often think of him when I think of this. People take that way too seriously. Like I know I
What?
did. We all take how we talk about our work way too seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, think about what we're trying to do here. It's probably a really good way to do it. We are trying to create meaningful connection with someone. Okay, and we are trying to make it so that it is more likely that we can offer them an opportunity to experience us more. So we played this out in one of the coaches journey intensives that we did. So the last 3 years we've done an in-person workshop, and we were playing with this connect piece, and we were playing with like, okay, what has to happen for it to count, or what has to happen for it to really maximize moving around the flywheel? Here's what we had. So mention coaching, right? If you don't mention coaching at any point, that's going to make it much less likely that it moves around the flywheel. If you mention it even just once, that makes it much more likely that it moves around the flywheel. So you don't have to say I'm a life coach or an exec coach or I work with, left-handed badminton players so that they have less anxiety about their whatever, right? It's just like I do coaching work. What's that? Well, it's one-to-one work with people, helping them achieve their goals, right? That's easily good enough. Because for the right people, if you've created meaningful connection, that will spark something for them. Then we had be really present, really connect, really listen. That's actually what helps us move around the flywheel to the next thing. So do those things really well. Do at least some reaching out, be where people are, and they have to be able to find you in the future. So you have to have said your surname. You have to have a strong enough mutual connection that it'll work. Um, but what Rich would say, he had this fantastic thing, which I think about all the time. His bridge would always, if someone says, "What do?" You think you have to answer that in a certain way. And he had this fantastic bridge, which was, "It's funny you should ask." So if someone says, "What do?" You say, "It's funny you should ask." And then you can say literally whatever you want after that. So we don't have to say, "I'm a confidence coach." You say, "It's funny you should ask. What I'm most interested in at the moment is this thing that happens when people first get promoted into management and they just like sink because they have never had any training in how to deal with people. And some people won't be interested in that at all. But the right people, the people who have just been promoted into management, they'll be like, do you know what? I'm interested in that too. And actually, most people have an experience of something like that. And so they'll pick up that thread of conversation. Or you might say, it's funny you should ask. It's quite hard to talk about my work. But let me think about who I spoke to yesterday. Well, I spoke to a woman who was doing this kind of thing and a man who was doing this kind of thing. Does that give you an idea? And then they'll either be like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I have a thing about
Yeah, I
like
quite
that.
like that
And
one.
then you're in
Telling them what you
conversation.
did. Yeah,
Like,
telling them who you spoke to.
yeah, or like, this is the project I'm most excited about at the moment. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm in a conversation with this organization who does something a bit like this. And I hope that it'll turn into a series of workshops, but who knows? Because my work is unpredictable like that. And then you get into this again, this interesting, like, so you can go forwards, you can go backwards, you can go sideways, you can go to imagination. You can just say, like, I mean, you could do a really bold bridge into offering an experience with you more. You could say, it's funny you should ask. Like, if you've already got the meaningful connection, a cool bridge will be, what do you do? Well, it's funny you should ask. I actually have, I actually do one-to-one coaching with people where I set aside some time to to like really get into what's meaningful for them and to help them, get out of their own way. I actually have some space to do that with people. Would you like to do it? Be pretty bold. It might feel like going back to, is it weird? Like it might
Mm.
be weird, but it might not be. Like I have,
I think the key is finding something that you feel confident with, and
yeah,
you feel comfortable saying it.
yeah,
And I tend to do it quite open. So the people who perhaps aren't going to be a good connection won't actually ask me more about it.
yeah,
The
right,
people who might be a good connection will ask me
yeah,
more about it.
yeah,
Um, and like everything in the flywheel, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
absolutely. And I think that's a really smart technique, right? Like one of the things we're doing throughout the flywheel process is filtering people, right? What we really want, the reason we get to work with clients is because we've said to somebody, this is how I work, um, this is how much it costs, and this is how to pay me, and they are somebody for whom it makes sense to pay you that amount of money. So what we're really trying to, so the only way you get the client is if you tell them that and it makes sense for them to do it. They will be better off if they do it. So they pay you the money, then you get the exchange of value and you get to work with somebody. So really, in the rest of the flywheel, we're filtering to get to the people who will say yes. Now, I wouldn't think about that too much when we're starting out a coaching business. If you want to focus time on connection, focus time on connection. But it's a really like what I would say is the more you can be true and authentic to yourself as you're connecting with people, the more likely people are to be curious. The right people are to be curious, and the
Mm.
more likely you are to get people around the flywheel. So yeah, I completely agree. Be open, but also like you said, it's about people finding their own way to do these things.
Yeah,
But
because I think it's worth catching that there is, well, maybe this is my story. You can pick me up on this. There is a bit of an ick around, I'm a life coach, thanks to Peep Show or whatever, the lighthouse thing, all the scammy shit. So there is that, I think people, coaches having that ick is real.
yeah, we talked about that quite a lot, didn't we, when I interviewed you on the show? So people can go back and check out that episode if they want more detail on that stuff. But yeah, it is, and so you got to find a way to do it. But look, if you're gonna call yourself a coach anywhere, hiding that in the connection phase is not going to filter for the people that want to do coaching. I mean, it might. You might smartly want to do that, and you might want to talk about, like, I guess what I would say is I've never had a standard way that I talk about what I do. I've
Mm,
always matched it to the people I'm talking to and
yeah.
always experimented. It's always, if I think back to those early days of connecting, probably when I was working with Joel or with Rich, it was all an experiment. It was all like, okay, well, how about if I talk about it like this time? Oh, and this
Yeah,
person,
that's a
they
good
seem most interested
idea.
in this. So maybe I should talk about that client that I spoke to who was a bit like this. Oh, we're just having a conversation about HR stuff here. Well, I'm not an HR expert, but I can talk about it a bit from experience and, feed in the coaching there and the people development stuff to their thing. And so I think that piece we can like
You can
we
play with it, can't you? And I
yeah.
think that adds to the gamification, and it adds not taking yourself too seriously, and that it brings the lightness to it instead of, or having a practice rehearsed answer. I think there's a lot of food for thought there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that way, practice rehearsed answer, to me it just like it's never going to match up in the real world. It's never going to be like a rehearsed thing, given
Mm.
how complex the people you're sitting across from are. And we all know that as coaches, that the people are incredible. Like they're absolutely amazing and complex. A practiced rehearsed answer is never going to be the perfect thing to say in a conversation with somebody. Like it's useful to practice and rehearse always, but the perfect thing to say is going to be something perfect and authentic for that person in that moment. Ruth, I want to catch a few things before we wrap up. So one is if I'm thinking about the goal of moving the flywheel, one of the things I'm thinking about when I'm connecting is being in people's minds
Mm.
and the work that I do or who I am being in their mind. So that's why reconnecting, introducing people, touching, inviting, being in their mind or inviting their generosity until it's natural that there's an offer of to experience me more, or it's natural that they ask for that. So that's one of the things we're thinking about here. The other things just worth saying is like we haven't really talked about like where do I go to connect with people? And I remember reading, I think it was in a Steve Chandler thing, it might be in the book The Prosperous Coach. He was just like, you wherever there are people, and I didn't believe that. And yet now I kind of know because I've given out business cards to people who work in Pret and I've had conversations with people at weddings who work behind the bar that actually the one I'm thinking of probably couldn't be a bit of a stretch. Be hard for him to work out, hard but not impossible for him to work out who I was. So we had this conversation. But I used to go to the RSA to events a lot and created clients
Mm.
there. That was a great place in London for it. This was really proved to me when I Like I went to my friend Ashley's Christmas party years ago, and one of her friends, on the spur of the moment, brought the guy she'd just been playing tennis with that afternoon, and then he became a client of mine because we connected deeply at the party, and then he was emailing me the next week. And I remembered when I did this that I like coaches love learning, right? So learning is an amazing place to connect with people doing training courses. Now you have to be a bit careful because most of the learning that coaches do is only done with other coaches. So it's useful for some people, but not for everybody. But did a little sum. So I did Seth Godin's The Marketing Seminar in about 2018 or 2019. It's like an online program. And I knew when I did it because my brother was doing it and he was like, this might be a fun way for us to hang out. And it really was. In fact, people can listen to this episode of the 12-Minute Method podcast where I talk about that because we've been speaking every week for an hour since then, which has changed our relationship completely. Anyway, the marketing seminar, I did it because of Ewan, but I knew then, I was like, this is going to pay back. It was 600 quid. I did a rough calculation. I think from the connections I made on that program, without any crazy prosperous coach inviting people, I think the people from that marketing seminar have paid me more than £12,000.
Wow.
So, and they're still paying me. So, so it's just like
Yeah,
those
that's a
things.
good one. I'd never thought of that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, going places or putting yourself in a situation with curious, ambitious, interesting people.
Yeah. You're one of those people, Ruth. So this is the thing for people listening, right? Your ideal client is you always. And so let's just so if there's somewhere that you are really interested in going, like really interested, the places you are most interested and a little bit scared to go, that's where your people will be. Now, sometimes those events aren't good for making connections. So, for example, I made a lot of connections at the RSA, but not through all. They have a few different types of events. Not all of them worked in the way that you want because not all of them really gave the opportunity for the conversation, the meaningful connection conversation. So we're definitely at time for this episode. We can, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because it feels like we could do way longer on this topic, and there could
Mm,
be loads more to get into. We'll see how we get into it. I'm sure we'll touch back to these kind of things as we go round the rest of the flywheel. Of course, so people can come along to the Coaches Journey community calls if they're interested in that. That's my flexible, affordable group coaching program for coaches. The September and November calls this year um, are available to people in the Diamond membership, which is £20 a month. So if you want to ask loads more questions about this or get coaching from me on it, you can pay £20, come along to one of those calls, and yeah, and like get some coaching from me, and then after that you can cancel. And that's what's fun about the Coaches Journey community experiment for me. Like I never know who my clients are. um if people want more on this, there's some more about it in the ebook, an introduction to the coaching business flywheel, and you can also buy the coaching business flywheel booster pack, which uh has a lot about what to do once you've connected with people in different
mm,
ways. So it has a set of invitation templates that you can use, and there's a guarantee, so you can get money back guarantee if you use them and they don't work. But also like all the emails I send. So people are often wondering like, how do I guide people through the process of becoming a client and afterwards? Well, I can't tell you how you should do it, but I can tell you exactly how I did it. And in fact, you can buy the exact emails from me in that booster pack. So
and
um,
I think they're helpful just to catch it
yeah,
with, um, like we mentioned, we touched on earlier about the stories we tell ourselves about connecting with people, reconnecting especially. And I think just having a template that you can change and personalize can kind of just clear that hurdle a bit, I think.
absolutely. And
It's just
I,
somewhere to start from.
yeah, I should say that. Like, I never send the same email twice, even though I've got templates in there and I use those templates. What I always do is go back to the last time I sent someone a type of email, and there are broad types of email, and then I rewrite it for that person. And that takes time. But this is about meaningful connection. Remember, we're not like that. What's the awkward thing? The awkward, the icky thing. And goes back to the practiced rehearsed answer. The icky thing is when you get an email from someone and you know they didn't think about you when they sent it, right? You
Yeah,
know it because they've made a typo. They've like misnamed you, or they've said something about you that's just not true. You get them all. I get them all the time, and that's
yeah,
icky. If you get an actual email from somebody that's actually thinking about you when they sent it and really mean everything they say in the email, and this is how to do it, right? Just make sure that you really mean everything you're saying. Then it's never awkward. It's just true. You know?
yeah.
Ruth, thanks for diving into all this with
Excellent.
me. Everybody who's listening, get in touch with either of us if you've got any more questions. And yeah, we'll be back with another in this series sometime soon. But we hope we have you back with us on the coach's journey for all the interviews and everything else we've got coming up too.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. It was great.
Bye.
Bye.